Well, here we go, the home stretch for Play Not Gone 2020. Pretty exciting college football series. The last few games are just unbelievable. The Hail Mary at the end of the Auburn and OSU game that Paul Salzgeber pulled out. What a finish. And the end of the Valor Bowl, too, with Michigan and Ohio State. Michigan holding on 11-3. I was thinking when Michigan or Ohio State had a 4th and 2 or 3rd and 2 and got a 1-yard loss, and I was thinking that the right call would be to call to take the loss and make it 4th and 3, but instead they took the 10-yard penalty, and I was thinking, might make you pay on that. But as it turned out, the Michigan defense stood up and held off, and the final was 11-3. So the standings as I have them show we have two teams that were 1-0, Clemson and Penn State, and somehow it doesn't seem that right that a team should be, the ultimate champion of all time winning just one game. But that's just me. I think we're going to have some sort of a vote on this. Probably not today, but we'll post the standings. But we've got Penn State and Clemson at 1-0. Then we've got Michigan at 5-2. We have Auburn at 5-1. So it looks like Auburn is probably has the inside track to being the number one of all time. Michigan, though, at 5-2. Texas was 4-2. And then a number of teams at 3-3 and so on and so forth. The only two teams that didn't play were Tennessee and Oklahoma. Nobody chose them to play in any of the bowl games. We'll have some sort of a vote to decide who the national champion of all time is, along with the official final standings. Time to move on to our final event. Well, actually, it's our next to final event. We do have the raffle at the end of this, our Sports Game Design 101 webinar. When I was preparing this webinar, I remembered when I started up restarted Play.com back in 2009 that I went to the Game Manufacturers Association website, and there was an ebook there about starting your own game company, and a number of different chapters about publishing games and designing games. And I remembered that, and I thought, I should go back to that and maybe get a refresher course and get some tips for this webinar I'm putting together. So I go back to the I fished the file out. And it's about a 150-page ebook, and to my chagrin, there's only a page and a half on game design. The book is written by Stephen Cole of the Amarillo Design Bureau. That's a a small press, well, not really that small, game publishing company in Texas. They specialize in Star Trek games. They've been around for a long, long time. And he's the guy that wrote this book, kind of a primer for starting a game company. And he says this. He says, I'm a game designer with over 100 published games, 30 years in the business, 3 Origins Awards, and several best-selling titles. And I just can't figure out how to teach somebody how to design games. I don't know how I learned it, so I don't know how to teach you. I'm sure somebody wrote a book about game design. Maybe you might want to go read it. Then he says, okay, I'm being flippant, but I'm really not coming up with any ideas about how to design games. I get the feeling that if you haven't already figured it out, I'm not going to be much help to you. And as I'm reading that, I'm thinking, there's a lot of truth to that. That's kind of the way I feel about it, too. Unfortunately, I should have read that before I promised to do a game design seminar as part of the NotCon. But here we are. It's on the books. Got to do it. So I'll do my best here to talk about designing sports board games, and maybe give you some pointers or give you some inside information how I think as a game designer. They're actually in this page and a half. I hate to call it a chapter at a page and a half. But there was some information that was helpful. He said, for one thing, almost every game designer started out by playing games, and then they moved on to changing, adding, or deleting the rules, which pretty much does describe how I got started with game design. I think I've told the story before, maybe at one of the conventions, about how I got started in sports board gaming. I was 13 years old. Me and my friend Don Walterman, who grew up on a dairy farm just outside of a little town in Wisconsin that I grew up in. He and I played. We're like budding football fans, and we played a lot of electric football. We got to thinking, it's kind of generic. We want something that actually does, real football. So we studied all the available options, APA and Stratomatic and some of the other ones, and we settled on APA football, and we each pitched in half for the game, which at that time cost $17.25 to ship to us from Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I remember it took us both like 2 months to save up that amount of money. And I remember when I got my $850 together, it was the most money I'd ever had in my whole life. And there I was mailing it off to Dick Seitz in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. But the game arrived and we loved it. We played it incessantly. I mean, I'm not exaggerating when I say we played thousands of games of APA football. We started up like a little neighborhood league with all the kids in the neighborhood and around town, and we had anywhere from 8 to 12 guys in the league. And we would actually go to Don's farm and we'd help with the chores first, and then we'd stay up all night playing APA football. We played an entire season in a night, at like a 10-game season. We'd have the championship game right around like 4 a.m., and then we'd crash for a couple hours. Then we'd get up and have our draft and for the next season. So, I mean, we played a lot of APA football. And I bring all that up because, as we played APA football, we began to, find things about it that we didn't like. We didn't think were right, so we started making some changes. We added some plays. We added the off-tackle play. We made our own medium pass play. We didn't like the way the defense worked, so we had our own system of how to count the points. We changed the way the offensive lines worked, and we made a bunch of changes to the game and tinkered with the rules. It was kind of the genesis for, hey, I think I'll make my own football game. We've made so many changes to this one. I bring all that up to say, if you're a tinkerer or a house rules type of gamer, then sports game design is probably something you've already done. But that's sort of the natural progression. I think Stephen Cole is right on the money with that. That you start out by playing, then you tinker, and then you say, what the heck, I'll make my own. One of the preliminary points we probably need to get out of the way before we move too much further is there is a difference between sports games and sports simulations. So sports board games, what we generally call sports board games, fall into two different categories: simulations and games. Simulations generate statistics, which can be very fun to compile and study and enjoy. And then there are the games, which a game generates decision-making and narrative, which can also be very fun. APA and Stratomatic are what I think would be classified as simulations, although every simulation has at least some game to it because they're simulating games in a way. So there is always some game to a simulation, but I would say, games like APA, Stratomatic, second season and so forth are primarily simulations. Then you got games like Bottom of the Ninth, Slapshot, games that are sports themed, but they are also sports games. However, they're not simulations; they're games. There's a lot of space in this segment. For example, games like Football Strategy, or Thinking Man's Golf, Win, Place, or Show. They're not simulations exactly. They simulate a sport, but not specific performers in a sport. So there are always some elements of simulation to a game, and there are always some elements of game to a simulation. There's a lot of space in there. So it's important, I think, to recognize that and define your space. And if you can find a space that isn't currently occupied, then that also is helpful too. One game that came to mind in that regard was like Time Travel Baseball, where it's not exactly a simulation, but kind of is. And it occupies sort of a unique space in the game and simulation continuum. There's also the distinction between solitaire and multiplayer. When I was putting the first draft of this seminar together, I spent a lot of time on this, talking about the strengths and weaknesses, the problems, issues facing both of those. But, really, as I thought about it, most of us in this hobby play the game solitaire, although this has been a great opportunity. I think, our NotCon has been a terrific opportunity to play sports games head-to-head, which, is awesome. Generally speaking, we play our game solitaire. And the games that we tinker with and design on our own are solitaire games. So I think we'll focus most of our energy on solitaire sports simulation games, which I think is really where the largest chunk of interest today is in the group of people that's gathered here right now. The cool thing is, I do want to say parenthetically, the cool thing is, though, that solitaire games are finding a foothold in the non-sports game world in recent years. Now, you go back 15 years ago, there were very, very few solitaire non-sports games. Most games board games were designed so that multiple people could play them together. And, then eventually maybe somebody would come up with a set of rules that you could adapt a multiplayer game to be played solitaire. Now, however, it's its own industry of solitaire board games. They're not, they could be fantasy games, they can be, resource games, they can be, space travel games. They have nothing to do with sports, but they're played solitaire. And I think that's a cool thing. Some of the game mechanics that we've worked on for so many years with sports games are very, very applicable to non-sports games. And that was one of the things we realized when we put out Aviatrix 37 for Play Now. A lot of anybody who's played that game probably recognizes a lot of the mechanics that we've used, and yet it's totally not a sports game. So it's encouraging to know that solitaire play is moving outside the sports world and into the regular board game world. So what is the number one factor in designing a sports game? Well, for me, it's a clear-cut number one, and that is fun. Fun is the number one factor. Fun outweighs everything. If it's fun, people are going to play it. No matter what flaws the game might have, no matter what the critics might say about it, and you will have critics. But the bottom line is, if it's fun, people are going to play it. Conversely, if it's not fun, it could be the greatest simulation of a sport that ever was, the most detailed, the most intricate, the most accurate simulation that has ever been created. And if it's not fun, nobody's going to play it, or very few will play it. So an important question then would be, well, how do you define fun? What's fun? And that's where it becomes kind of a problem, because you really can't define fun. Fun is not something that can be defined. Fun is something that's just experienced. And I think a good example of this is fishing. I know people who just love fishing. They live to fish. They spend their summer vacations going off on fishing vacations. They spend their weekends free going up in the mountains and finding a good lake or a good stream, and they just love fishing. And I've fished a few times, and it's like totally boring. It's like why do I want to spend my afternoon doing this? And that's not a slam on fishing. It's just some people find fishing to be a lot of fun. Some people don't find it to be fun at all. It's the same thing with really the same thing in most every kind of entertainment form, but it applies equally well to sports simulation games. What is fun in the sports simulation game? Well, there's lots of things that are fun, and different things are fun to different people. For some people in our hobby, the fun is in looking at the cards and reading the game rules, looking over the rules, looking over the materials, finding the individual player cards, evaluating that card, thinking about the performer that it represents and how this card captures that person's abilities. And for them, the fun begins even before the game is played. I mean, that's the fun, is just in looking over the stuff and just sort of savoring what these materials might generate. What do they represent, and how well they capture a specific set of sports performers' abilities. There are some people in our hobby that have just these massive collections of sports games, and some people scratch their heads and wonder, what the heck? Why do you have so many games? You couldn't possibly play all those games. Well, the fun for them is in the games, and for them that's fun, and it's perfectly legitimate. Sometimes their wives aren't too appreciative of that, but that's where they find fun. And for many people, I'd say the largest chunk of people, the fun is in playing the game and using the game engine and the materials that come with the game to recreate sports action in such a way that it ignites our imaginations, and we're able to visualize what's going on, and it maybe resurrects some nostalgia or creates a viable projection of what might occur. And we use it engages with our imagination and allows us to imagine sports action on our tabletop. And then for some people, the fun isn't even in playing the game. The fun really doesn't start until after the game is over with, and you get to start to add up the statistics. For some people, that's where the fun is. Playing the games is kind of secondary. What they really want to see is how close to the statistics come to, what happened in real life. And the closer the stats match to the real life performance, the more fun they're having. Now, there's nothing wrong with any of these being somebody's fun. It just depends on the gamer. It's difficult, although not impossible, to please all three of these segments. But my philosophy has always been that if I think it's fun, then other people will think it's fun too. So for me, I would say I have a pretty balanced approach to sports board gaming. I enjoy the components part of it, looking over the materials. I certainly enjoy playing the games, and I enjoy the statistical part of it as well. All three of those areas are important to me, and I feel like I have a pretty balanced view. But I do realize that different people aren't along the same continuum as I am. Some people find the stats more important. Some people find the components more important. Some people find the gameplay most important. But again, if I think it's fun, I'm sure that other people will find it to be fun too, and that's kind of always been my anchor point. To be successful, I think a sports game has to pass what I call the acid test, and I believe that for a game to be successful in a sports sim game world, it has to do one of two things. It either has to be better than what's already available, or different than what's already available. That's the acid test. Is this game better than what's available in some way, or is it different than what's available in some way? Basically, to gain a foothold in a tough market, it's a general marketing principle, and there are very few markets that are tougher than the sports simulation board game market in terms of the amount of product available and the size of the audience consuming it. To gain a foothold in a tough marketplace, your product has to be either better than the others or different than the others. I remember one of my earliest football game ideas, and I've had a lot of different ideas for football games when I was in college, and this was kind of when I was still kind of playing APA a lot, and I kind of reached that point where I was thinking, well, maybe I should make my own game. And I came up with a game that was very, very similar to APA's. It was just like APA, except, wait for it, I used letters instead of numbers. So I had little cards that were set up with 11 to 66 and 3 columns, run, pass, and kick. But instead of numbers being there were letters there. And so I'm making, I think it was the 1978 season, I was making the teams for that, the cards for that. And I'm making the cards, and I'm thinking, why am I doing this? who would play this game? It's like, why would I want to play this game? Why would I just play the APA version of this and make use my own house rules? It just wasn't different, and it wasn't better. It was just basically the same. So I think that's an important thing to remember when, in design. Is this better, or is it different? Otherwise, why don't I just play what's already there and, spend my time enjoying the game rather than, trying to design a game? So, in what ways, these are two important questions to consider if you want to make a sports game about a particular topic, or there's some sports game that some game that isn't out there, some sport that isn't represented, and you'd like to make a game. In what ways can a sport be better represented than it currently is through the products available? That would be question number one. I'm spending a lot of time working on this basketball project, as I'm sure you know. And that's a question that I just have been asking myself a lot. In what ways can basketball be better represented in a sports board game than it currently is? Now, there are a lot of great a lot of great basketball games out there, over the years. That's the thing about designing sports games. There's so many really good games out there. It's pretty hard to be different or better. But in terms of basketball, Sam suggested a couple of weeks ago that I don't know how he stumbled across it. It was the ESPN series The Last Dance with the Chicago Bulls and Phil Jackson, their last run of the sixth title. And he said, he was, we've been talking about basketball, and he thought he'd watch it just to kind of maybe get some inspiration. He said, Dad, you should watch this. It's pretty cool. So I started watching the series. And it is a great series. There's a 10-part series, and it's some great footage and some really great, from my perspective, some great inspiration. So a couple of things that I've gleaned just from watching The Last Dance. First of all, in terms of how can basketball be better represented than it has been to this point. One thing that I noticed was how great a coach Phil Jackson was. I mean, I watched that and I just have so much respect for him. He's just such a great coach and a great guy. And it really became apparent that he was a kind of coach that got his players to play better. And you would really much rather have Phil Jackson on the bench than Doug Collins or somebody like Bill Musselman. The guy that's coaching has a pretty strong impact on the performance of the players. And yet, to my knowledge, and again, if there's a game out there that has coaches cards and a coaching impact, I'm not aware of it, but I've never played one. And I'm thinking, well, there's an area where a basketball game could be made, better than what's come before in the area of who's sitting on the bench as the coach. Another thing that I've noticed in watching this series, there's tons of great action footage in this series. It's just so well produced. So you're seeing lots of game footage stuff happening, and it began to kind of dawn on me that they'll have a shot of somebody like Steve Kerr, dribbling up the floor, and then he kind of lays the basket in, and 2 points for the Bulls. And then next frame you got Michael Jordan screaming down the court, lifting off at the top of the key, doing a 360 underhanded behind his back slam dunk. The crowd goes wild, and it's 2 points. Same score, completely different baskets. And it made me think, I don't know of basketball games where baskets that, where the value of the basket is different based on, the amount of energy and the amount of pizzazz that it generates. It just occurred to me that, all baskets are not created equal. And yet in, the typical basketball game, you get a basket, you get 2 points for it. And, on the scoreboard, that is what it is. But in reality, there's something more to it. So I haven't figured out a way to, really capture that. Although the lightning status feature of the basketball game idea that I'm working on does sort of trigger some cool stuff. I would like to maybe I think there's some more attention could be placed there. But those are just two aspects, and I don't mean to make this a clinic on how to make a basketball game. I'm just saying, in terms of thinking, how can basketball be better represented than it has been to this point? Those are a couple things that kind of come to mind. The other question, what ways can a sport be represented differently than it currently is through the products available. And, we can kind of shift gears from here. There's been a couple of games that we've done have definitely been different than what's come before. I think, History Maker Baseball, most people agree, is like is way different than the other baseball games. And we, intentionally designed it that way. If you've read the 20-year retrospective that we published last year for our 20th anniversary, when it came down to crunch time and Play Games was going to have to be a game company, it was like, well, if you're going to be a game company, a sports game company, you got to have a baseball game. And if you're going to have a baseball game, it's got to be better or different than what's out there. And, how are you going to be better than Stratomatic or APA? So we went with different. And, I consciously studied ways that baseball was not represented in other games, and the result was History Maker Baseball with chemistry and player experience and all the things, qualities instead of numbers. And if you remember when it came out, there were a lot of people that really blasted it. They thought this is ridiculous, it's silly. But I'm really pleased that it's found its foothold over the last 5-6 years, and really proud of how far it's come. But that's an example of doing things differently. But also other games too, Red, White, and Blue Racing. The whole idea of a race game being represented by the relative positioning of the cars as opposed to moving cars around a track. Every race game that I'd played before that was, consisted of, moving cars around a track. You roll dice or you'd flip a card or whatever, and the cars would move around the track. And as I showed you in the museum tour, that idea was kind of stuck in my head too. It's like, well, if it's going to be a NASCAR game, you got to be moving around a track somehow. And then History Maker Golf, where most golf games, you've got the quick play games where you roll the dice. Oh, we got a birdie. Bogey. And then you've got the full stroke by stroke games where, I'm choosing my 2 wood to tee off with, and I put it on the edge of the rough iron. I get my 5 iron out and take a shot, and I roll the dice, and puts me on the green, and then I'm going to try to putt, and you're doing club by club selection, shot by shot. And again, there's nothing wrong with that. There are some great games that do that. But to find out, what's a different approach, I think, History Maker Golf is a great example of a different approach to golf, which has also been really well received. So the takeaway from this, I think, is that different can be just as viable as better in terms of game design, so long as it's fun. Let's talk a few minutes about capturing feel in a sports game. Part of what makes a sports game, for me, in my opinion, is capturing the feel of a sport. Statistics, not that hard to capture the statistics, really. I mean, to be honest with you, it's not that difficult to make a statistically accurate sports game. The hard part is making a statistically accurate sports game that's fun. So capturing the feel of the sport, to me, is what really makes a game fun. And this might be the hardest part of trying to explain how to design a game. And this is where I can really relate to what Stephen Cole said at the beginning of this, at the beginning of our little time here, where he says, I don't know how I do it. I don't know how I learned how to do it. It's just, I'm afraid if you don't already know how to do it, I'm not going to be much help. So I thought I might just go through some examples of where I think that we've captured feel in play games. Some of them came immediately to mind. The first one that came to mind was Bowlorama's participant mode. Now I know there are people that don't want to do that because it's like, well, I don't want to have any influence on how well Mark Roth bowls. But in terms of capturing the feel of bowling, rolling a D20 down a cardstock alley, and you're standing there and you're trying to, you've got the same really body decisions to make as you do in real bowling. I mean, it really feels like real bowling. So that's one example. The glove chart on History Maker Baseball, I think, is another thing where, you get the result. It's a deep drive. It's going. And yet there's the feel. He's got a chance. Is he going to make the catch? You roll the dice. Oh, it's out of here. And every once in a while, every once in a blue moon, somebody does make that grab. I think it's actually happened once in all the times I've played the game. But it's still cool to think, yeah, I can visualize that. That ball is going, and you're thinking, is it out of here? It's gone. The playmaking ratings in second season, where especially the linemen's ratings, the offensive linemen, who typically get the short shrift in like television broadcasts, especially, where it says that if your tackle A is rated 2 on the pass, he holds his block and the quarterback delivers the strike to the wide receiver. You go to the XM chart or something. That to me, I can think of a number of games that have been won on the last play because the offensive lineman held his block and the quarterback had time to find his receiver for the winning score. And typically when you see that on a TV broadcast, you'll see the commentator will say something like, "Look at all that time he has." There's Aaron Rodgers dropping back in the pocket. Look at the time he has. They don't ever take the camera and focus on that offensive lineman, but that if Aaron Rodgers has that kind of time, it's because the offensive lineman made it for him. And that's one of those things where I think second season really captures the feel of a football game, and one of the things I'm most proud about it. And then the putting aspect of History Maker Golf. The feeling of sinking a double difficult putt. I was thinking back to a number of the different live events that we've done with the golf game. We did one in Atlanta. We did one in Charlotte. We've done a couple here in Denver. It's just to me. It never gets old. Where I'm sitting at some table and all of a sudden I hear a table just erupt. Oh, or oh. It's just like watching golf on TV, where if the putt is made or missed, the gallery just erupts. I mean, that to me means that you've captured the feel when you get the same response from people gathered around a game table as you do, the people gathered around a green at a golf tournament. So the putting aspect of History Maker Golf is another one of those things that I think captures feel. I also think the build aspect of Soccer Blast, where you get the attack, and it's on target, and then you got a chance to make the shot, and it might go in, it might not go. I was talking with I think it was with Kyle Cope earlier today about how if you're using percentile dice, let's assume I don't offhand know what the success percentage on a goal is. But let's assume there are 30 shots in a soccer. Each team gets 30 shots and they get one goal. So it's about a 3% chance of sinking a goal. Now you could take 2d10 and say, okay, if you roll a 1, a 2, or a 3, it's a goal. And then the other results are not a goal. But there's no real drama in that. It doesn't capture the feel of the build of the ball being moved down into position. Oh, look at this. This might have a chance. And then resolving the shot. So that really is better captured by the Soccer Blast, kind of methodology where it's like a 50-50 chance. Oh, you're going to get to go to the next. It's getting close. Well, and another 50-50 chance. Oh, and now we're even closer. So it's a kind of a staggered, tiered method of building. And every time you pass one of those tiers, the excitement begins to build. Like we might get a goal out of this. So I think that also is an example of capturing the feel of a sport. And finally, the Hockey Blast, the rebound shots on Hockey Blast, where you'll get a play, you'll get a shot, it's missed, but you get a rebound shot. Then you get another rebound shot. And then it's just like, sometimes you get like 2, 3, 4, 5 of them in a row, and you can just visualize that chaos around the net with the goalie standing on his head, stopping every shot. Then all of a sudden he covers it up, and the puck is frozen, the horn sounds, and and we go to a face-off. It's like, whoa, that to me, feels like hockey. So those are some examples of capturing feel in sports games. Again, I think it's an important part of making a fun experience. I do want to talk a few minutes about unusual and rare results in a game. Early on, 30 years ago, I don't really think unusual results were really part of the mix. But nowadays, I think the hobby kind of expects them to be there, or they're disappointed if they're not there. So if you're going to design a game of your own, having unusual results and having them, be appropriate and correct. I mean, if you got, it's an area where you can really mess up a game unintentionally if you don't pay the right attention to it. I started this first with Face to the Mat. Using this method, and then I did the same. Used this method again for red, white, and blue racing, and by that time I kind of had it down to what I think is kind of a formula, and used it for the baseball game and for soccer and golf. So it works like this. You start out by making a list of every kind of unusual event that you can think of. It assumes that you have some sort of working knowledge of the sport. If you don't, you can always look it up. But make a list of every kind of unusual, crazy thing. And then once you've exhausted, your possibilities of what you can think of, then you go online and you begin to look for other possibilities. You just Google crazy stuff that happens in golf. And then you just read and you look and you keep this running list. It's not something that happens in a half hour or an hour. It can go for weeks. You just keep this running list of unusual things that you want to have happen in the game that could happen in a particular game of whatever sport you're recreating, or a particular event of whatever sport you're recreating. So you get this big long list, and eventually, at some point, you begin to find it harder and harder to add anything. You'll do a search. I already got that. Oh, you'll see something on TV. Oh yeah, I already have that on my list. Eventually, you get to a point where you're not coming up with anything new. At that point, then you begin to prioritize. You start to break your list into groups. Stuff that happens most common, stuff that happens least common. And I think the key thing here is creating a bank of unusual results that are not that unusual. That I think is the key to a successful, to really, ultimately appropriately using unusual results. You want to have a bank of unusual results that really aren't that unusual. Unusual results that could happen, that they could happen in consecutive games, and you'd think, wow, that happened. I had that happen last game. But you wouldn't think, well, that could never happen. And again, it's just a matter of knowing the sport and applying that knowledge to the percentages of your dice rolls. You want to have stuff that could happen, reasonably happen, in consecutive games or multiple times, and still be considered to be that's notable. But you wouldn't have them happen and think that's not realistic. That happened last game. If you can find that list, then that is, I think, half the battle. Then you sprinkle in the other results, and then from then it just becomes a matter of percentages and odds. You have typically you'll have a tier of results that are pretty common that could happen pretty much any time, and you'll have a couple of results on that column that you'll re-roll on the next one. And those are the ones, and you can figure it out. You can figure out, all right, I've got my numbers set up so that one or two of these unusual results are going to happen per game. It's just basic math. You can figure out how many, you're rolling, you got 60 dice rolls, you're using 2d6, so you're probably going to roll the same number twice. So, if one of those is an unusual result, you're going to have one or two unusual results per game. So you figure that out, and then from the unusual results chart, you can figure out, okay, on my unusual results chart, I'm going to have 2 results or 3 results that will send me to the next tier, which means 1 out of every 10 games, or 5 to 10 games, you'll go to that second tier. And then you can add a third tier or more. I mean, if you really want to go crazy, the baseball game has the Z, the highlight reel Z, which it's designed that you're just never going to get there, or maybe once in your gaming career. You don't have to necessarily go that far, but the idea is you want the more common unusual results to happen more often than the truly unusual or rare results. And the key to that, I think, is finding that bank of results that are really not that unusual. By the way, there's a newsletter article that I wrote on unusual results. I think it was a couple years ago now. And it's on the website. You can go to that by clicking on the newsletter link, and then going down the list. It's on there somewhere. And one of the points that I make in there is that I think it's okay for a sports game to perhaps overrepresent certain rare or unusual results to a certain degree, given that you're not likely to play thousands of games. If you got something that happens generationally. It would be okay if it happened maybe a little more frequently than it actually happens, given the fact that you're probably not going to play as many games as you would need to have it happen. So anyway, you might find that article interesting if you're interested in unusual results for your sports game. Of course, it would not be a game design webinar unless I brought this up: dice or fast action cards. After I put this together, I thought, is there some other way to do it besides dice or fast action cards? And I remembered, oh yes, what about spinners? I've never made a game with a spinner, and it got me thinking, I should do that. I remember when I made the 1890s Fight Club, part of the reason for me doing was, I wonder if I could make a game where you only used one die and have it be fun. So it was kind of a design experiment. So I think maybe my next design experiment is going to be, I think I'm going to make a game with a spinner. Just to do it, just to see. But that's going to have to go for the next game design webinar because I haven't done it yet. Dice or fast action cards? We'll just talk about each briefly. Fast action cards, the biggest upside to fast action cards, in my view, is the fact that they can be used to time the game in addition to generating the action. So it's one less thing that you have to worry about. You go through the deck, and when the deck is done, the quarter's over. And that is a real upside, I think. Facts are also great if you get a bunch of complex information, bunch of complex series of charts that you're having to navigate. It's much easier if you can just fit them on the card, and then there's the result. No lookups, no page flipping, no flipping of the charts, no body movement of looking here or here or here. It's like, here's my result. Boom. Here's another one. Boom, boom, boom. So there is something to be said for that. Also, the results are more evenly distributed with fast action cards. If you take a deck, just think of a deck of ordinary playing cards with 52 cards in it. You go through that deck, you're going to get exactly 13 spades, exactly 13 diamonds, exactly 13 clubs. There's no variation there. It's going to be exactly the same. That, however, I think is also the downside. Or one of the downsides of fast action cards. You're going to get very even results. Now, you might think, well, how's that a downside? When I was in college, we had a status pro basketball league. We had 6 guys in the league. We drafted from the 1977-78 cards that I had. And so basically we each had all-star teams. All of us had very, very good teams that were really equal and star caliber. And I noticed, and of course, me being the one that was introducing people to this, I was pretty much sitting there for every game, keeping the statistics and flipping the facts and telling people what to do. So I'm running this league, and about halfway through it, I'm realizing, wow, it doesn't matter how far a team falls behind, they always seem to catch up. Why is that? And it occurred to me, it's probably because of the fast action cards. They're, over time, as you use them and as they spread out, the ebbs and flows are going to even out. And it was uncanny. I remember there was one team that got out to like a 30-point lead one time. It was coached by Goose DeMonte. He called his team the Geese. And I remember he got out to like a 34-point lead. I'm thinking, that's not going to hold up. I don't know how. Sure enough, Randy, the guy that was playing against him, came all the way back and actually won the game on a buzzer. So I do think that fast action cards do give you more even results. And is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? It's really hard to say. Talking about dice. Before I leave fast action cards, a big downside to fast action cards is if you lose a couple. If you've ever been playing a game and then you play a number of games, and then all of a sudden you realize, I think this deck is a little thinner than it should be, and you count it out, and you're missing like 5 fast action cards. You just finished 5 games. That's pretty discouraging. So losing a card is, a problem with a fast action deck. Going to dice. And dice are my personal preference, as you might be able to guess, although, we do have dice and fast action cards games in the play stable. I prefer dice. I like dice. I like the feel of dice. I like the sound of rolling dice. I like the results. I like the unpredictability. So personally, I prefer dice. They're also, another upside is they're more economical in terms of resource usage. And what I mean by that is, you can take a piece of paper and create a couple of tiers of charts. 2 through 12, roll 2 dice, add them together, and 12 you go to the chart B, and 2 through 12, and maybe you have a chart C. And you can have like 3 tiers of charts and 2 dice, and you can have you can capture the same amount of variability as would require like 100 or 150 fast action cards, which would require, to get that many, you'd have to have like 10 sheets of cardstock, with printing on both sides. So as opposed to 2 dice and a sheet of paper, you now need 10 sheets of cardstock to do the same thing. So from a resource usage standpoint, dice can be a lot better than fast action cards. And again, it's basically the same argument as with facts in terms of the even distribution of results. Dice, are notorious for being uneven. You see this posted all the time on the various forums. Oh, the dice weren't kind to the Phillies today. And it's true. I mean, hypothetically, you could roll the same number 50 times with dice. It could happen theoretically. It can't happen in a fast action deck. So, is that a benefit? Is that a drawback? Kind of a little of both. It just makes them different. Bottom line is, they each have their strengths, and we use both. I really don't think you can go wrong with either. Gosh, we're down to only 5 minutes left. I wanted to talk about components really briefly. This might not be applicable for folks making a game for themselves, but you might find this interesting. Stephen Cole points out that to be really successful at game design, you have to design on several levels. There's the game design part where you're, the engine, the game engine, that generates the results, right? That has to be solid. Then there's the product design aspect of game design, where you're deciding, am I going to have color? Am I going to have black and white? Am I going to use heavy card stock? Am I going to use cutout tokens or plastic tokens? Or there's the product design part of it as well. And then there's the packaging design. Am I going to use a box? What kind of box? What's going to be on the box? Am I going to have something inside the box to hold the components? So there's at least those 3 levels of design involved with game design. And, we frequently get input on, the size and quality of our components. I would say, generally our input is very favorable. We get a lot of people say, wow, I'm really impressed with the quality of your components. And I'm thinking, well, our components aren't that great compared to like what Stonemaier Games does, or many of these, non-sports game companies. And then we get the people that aren't satisfied with what we do. They find the cards to be too small, the printing to be too small. The black and white is a turnoff. They'd rather have color. First of all, I'll just say, and I don't mean to be defensive. I'm just stating the fact. I am a fan of small and compact. I've always liked small. And a lot of people are like me. There are a lot of small games out there that specialize. There's the Tiny Epic series. Travis Jansen, I don't think he's here, but he's a huge fan of Tiny Epic. We just got this game the other day. This is not a Tiny Epic game. This is a game we picked up from Level. I'm holding it the wrong way. From Level 99. It's a very small game in a very small box with very small tokens and stuff. And we're not the only people that bought this game. A lot of people like that. You want small? Here's small. These are pack-a-games. These are actual games that are in a gum-sized pack. Here's a boxing game. Here's a bus game. And here's a game where you're a pet digging in the yard. All right. So, and these are fun games. They're cool, and people love these games. So, small does not. I'm not going to apologize for smalls. Small is attractive to some people. I also think that in a relative sense, our cards are sufficiently large relative to the amount of content on them. You're looking at a Stratomatic card, and you look at the number of characters on that card in terms of letters and numbers, and then you look at a Hockey Blast card and do the same thing. Count up the number of characters on that card. If you divide the number of characters by the real estate of the card in terms of square millimeters or whatever, I think you'd find that the Hockey Blast cards or the Soccer Blast cards or the Red, White, and Blue Racing cards are actually a lot less dense than many sports game cards. So, in a relative sense, our cards, I think, are sufficiently large. Our goal is to make our cards just as large as they need to be, because ultimately, this is a business for us, and for us, the goal is to provide good value. We want to have a balance of cost and quality. Obviously, we could put out, Stonemeyer Games type quality, and people would be paying a couple $100 for a sports game. And I don't think people want, there are people who say, "Oh, I'd pay that," but there are a lot of people who won't. Similarly, if we could have just paper and ink, there are people who would love that, and people who would say, I don't want to play this. So we try to aim in the middle. We typically try to find a couple of components that we can really make nice. Like the Hockey Blast books are really nice. They're that heavy cardstock, the glossy color. They're well put together, and we use a good box, and we try to have a good value to the stuff we do. And I really do feel like the games that we have right now are the best value that they can be. I guess the point I would want to make is everything that we do is by design. We've thought it through as to what a good value is, and we try to present as good a value as we can, and try to find that middle ground where it will appeal to the most people and be satisfactory to the most possible people. Now, I know this is all irrelevant to the topic of designing your own game, but it is a concern for somebody who's running a game company, and we just thought we'd throw that out there. Originally, I was going to strike this from the seminar, but Sam says no, you should leave that in there. People might find that interesting. So there it is. And besides, we're going to delete this video anyway after the at the end of the webinar. So what the heck? Final point: when is it finished? When can you consider a game to be finished? Nadia Geller is the owner and managing director of a California-based interior design company, and she frequently interviews applicants for jobs at her company. And one of the questions she asks is it better to be perfect and late or good and on time? For the response, the correct response in her ears was good and on time, because she says perfection is really not attainable. She says, and if you're making people wait for something that ultimately is not going to be perfect, then that's a problem. For me, the important part of that statement is the first part. Perfection is really not attainable. And also the options that weren't offered. For example, how about on time but poorly done? Everybody agrees that that's not appropriate. But it is relevant, to a game design. It's like, when is this game really finished? When is it finished? Can I put it out there now? No sports game is ever perfect, ever. You got games that have been around for 50 years, and there are still people saying, no, this is a problem with that game. No sports game is ever perfect. I don't think any game is ever perfect. Maybe chess. Chess might be the perfect game. I think you get your sports game to a point where it works well. You obviously don't ignore major problems. If you're creating a baseball game and your scores are 35-28, you got a problem. That's good and on time that's obviously not good and on time. But if you're satisfied with the results, and you feel like you're enjoying this and it works, in my opinion, I don't think you have to obsess over getting every nuance exactly right. I get back to the number one point, and that is fun. Fun overrules everything. Is your game fun? Are you having fun? Are other people having fun? If you feel like there's nothing more to do, and that will detract from it, go for it. It's finished. You can always revise something if it comes up that could make the game better down the road. But to obsess over, it's got to be perfect. I got to wait and get this perfect. I think that could be a real rabbit hole. Go with what's fun and enjoy yourself. Game design should be a fun process, and if you're not having fun, don't do it. So that's our game design webinar. I hope you got something out of that. I guess it's on to the raffle. We're not going to switch gears here or go to a different stream. We'll just do our raffle stream right now. I would love to do a question and answer session, but I don't really see a way to do that, realistically here. So maybe if you got questions, if you have questions, you can always email. The email address is info@play.com, PLAAY.com. All right, time for our raffle. And then we'll wrap up our Play Not Con 2020. Hard to believe it's coming to an end. It certainly has been a fun event. It's been I have to say, we were a little nervous about this, but we've definitely exceeded our hopes, and it's been a really great 2 days. Just so pleased with the response and the results and the interaction, and I think the technology acted up pretty well. Worked pretty well for us, and we'll definitely. I think we're going to take a day off, but then we're going to sit down and talk about where we might go with this technology down the road. But for now, let's talk about the raffle. So we were going to actually make little raffle tickets and put them in a series of buckets like we did for the real convention. But then we realized that would probably take 3 hours or so to do that. So instead, I have the spreadsheet that I created with everybody's name and where they assigned their tickets, and we're just going to use the sort function on the big computer here in the Play headquarters, and we're going to use a random number generator that's on Google to identify a cell which will contain the name of our winner. So each of the different prizes had a different number of people who entered for it. The golf course collection was obviously the most popular raffle ticket prize, raffle ticket destination. So we have, I think, maybe 250 tickets in that bucket, that virtual bucket. And I think the fewest was the dodgeball game. So if you register for that, you have a better chance of winning that. So what we'll do is we'll sort the tabular data, figure out how many names are in the column, enter that number into our Google random number generator, generate the number, look up that person, award the prize, and boom, just like that. We'll mail those prizes out this week. So our first prize is the History Maker Golf course collection, complete course collection, which will include course collection 15. And Sam, if you will go ahead and sort through that.
All right.
And give us a number and a name.
The number is 16.
All righty.
And the name is Cooper Gilbert.
Cooper Gilbert gets the History Maker Golf complete course collection up there in upstate New York. I think Cooper lives pretty close to the new Empire Oaks course outside of Rochester. All right, our next prize is the History Maker Baseball all-time franchise great collection, all 4 series, which includes every major league team's all-time great lineup.
For reference, there were 163 people in that basket. 163 tickets. 143 in this one.
All right, so 163 in the first one?
Yeah, in the first one.
Okay, I thought it was more than that. All right, so and 143 in this one.
That's right. And the number is 71.
71.
And that is Judah Williams.
Judah Williams. All right, Judah. I believe what was his name? Spy Fuzz or something like that? I forget what his name was. J Fuzz. J Fuzz. Yeah. All right, Judah, way to go. You get the all-time franchise great baseball collection. The next prize was I can't remember what order it is. And I got
Hockey Blast, all-time franchise.
Okay, the Hockey Blast series 1, 2, and 3 all-time franchise great teams. How many entries do we have for that?
We've got 89 entries for that.
89 entries for all-time franchise great hockey. And the winner it's going to be number 34.
And that is Jeff Harlow.
Jeff Harlow. Jeff, I hope you have the hockey game. I'm not sure you do, but I hope you do. Well, you must have her. He put his ticket in there, so he's got to have it. All right. Jeff Harlow gets the all-time franchise great Hockey Blast set. What's next? The Fury Football Ultimate, I think it is?
Yes, Fury Football Ultimate.
Fury Football Ultimate includes the game, the expansion teams, and the playmat. That's a pretty stiff package there of goodies for Fury Football.
There are 80 people on this list.
Okay, and of 80, the magic number is?
4.
Number 4, wow.
And that is Brian Aronoff.
Brian Aronoff. All right, Brian. Up there in Connecticut. All right, Brian gets the Fury Football Ultimate Package. Then I believe we got the Demo Derby Smashdown Ultimate Package, right?
That's correct.
And that's going to include the game and the Scrapyard Pack, which includes a couple of hundred junk cars to put on your mat, and you get the mat as well, the County Fair Cola County Fair play mat. And how many would we have for that?
45.
45 people chose that. So 45 tickets in the bin, and we are choosing ticket number 15.
15, that is Travis Jansen.
Travis Jansen, all right. Travis gets the Demo Derby Smashdown goodies. And that leaves us to our final, is our last one, right?
Last one is dodgeball.
Last one is dodgeball. Okay, now just an FYI, the dodgeball game is not finished 100%. It's kind of like what I was just talking about. It plays well. Can't really think of anything more to do. It's not in its, we haven't formatted it in InDesign yet. At least not all the parts of it, but it's playable and it's fun, and I think you'll enjoy it. And we'll also we're giving you a copy of the dodgeball DVD. Now, I will say a heads up that this is the unrated version. I forget why we couldn't get the something that was rated.
Available anywhere.
Couldn't find it anywhere, but we wanted to have this available to mail it now. So it is the unrated version. So if the Williams family gets this, you might want to, just be advised.
I don't think they're on the list.
Okay, I don't think they chose that. All right. So how many people? 62 people. All right.
The number is 33. That is going to be. It's Travis Jansen again. We gotta.
Oh yeah, we have a rule. Can't win more than one prize.
So we'll roll it again. Number 8. That is Ethan Muslin.
Ethan Muslin gets dodgeball. All right. So Cooper, Judah, Jeff, Brian, Travis, and Ethan, congratulations. We'll get those prizes in the mail to you this week. We'll also mail out the course collections we gave away with the golf tournament and all the other goodies we gave away yesterday. So we got a big box full of stuff to ship out tomorrow morning. All right, that's it. That's a wrap. Thank you all for being part of this. It's been an education. It's been an experience. It has been really delightful. It's been fun. It's been super rewarding. It's been really encouraging. It's been really encouraging on this end to see everybody really having a good time. And thanks for being part of it. I'm sure other people have the same trepidation that we did. It's like, I don't know if this is going to work on it. Is this really going to be fun? Well, I'm getting a swag bag out of it. What the heck? But I do think that it turned out to be pretty fun. Just watching the end of the college football games, it was like, man, that was pretty exciting. Just going from room to room and watching the different games, and watching the scores stream in yesterday for the baseball tournament and the golf tournament, and just a really great weekend. So thank you all for being part of it, and thank you for making it happen. Again, the email address info@play.com if you get questions or comments or anything you'd like to say, and we will be in touch about our next online event. Hopefully, knock on wood, a live convention in 2021, and we'll have more information about that hopefully around by Christmas time. So until next time we're together online, stay safe, stay well, and again, thanks for being part of the Play Games community.